Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. It is 9:05 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left, Vice Chair Commissioner Wayne Fournier, Commissioner Emily Klaus, Commissioner Mejia on Zoom, and I believe Commissioner Grant will be joining us shortly. We have public virtual attendance available on Thurston County YouTube channel. Public comment may be just received in writing up to 2 hours in advance of meeting and will be distributed to the Board of County Commissioners. Action may be taken at this meeting. First up this morning is solid waste facilities project updates. And I know we have Public Works folks in the house. Come on up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Karen Weiss, Public Works Director, and my team. I'll have them introduce themselves to my right.
Hi, I'm Jeff Pickford, the Solid Waste Division Manager.
And I'm Matt Samuelson, Capital Projects Manager for mostly solid waste.
So this is a board requested status update. It is informational only on a couple significant solid waste facility projects that we have, we're moving forward on. The first slide. Are you in charge, Jeff?
Down
You're in
is forward.
charge.
There you go.
Okay. So just some background to get us up to speed on where we currently are for these projects. So there was a solid waste facility condition master plan that was completed in 2018 by a consultant. That has provided the blueprint or the framework for us as we are making upgrades and plans for our solid waste facilities and planning for the future. One of the more significant projects that came out of that master plan process was a reconfiguration of the Waste and Recovery Center, which is of course the main solid waste site for collection of our municipal solid waste, to have a Hazo house there, recycling, organics, etc. I think most of you have been on a tour of that, so are familiar with what that looks like. The reasons for the recommended reconfiguration it is an aging facility, so we are experiencing a lot of ongoing maintenance costs. It is not designed to plan for the future growth and capacity needs of our growing community, our growing county. It is intended to increase or improve customer access and reduce the wait times and improve safety. Right now, Jeff will go into it a little bit on the configuration plan, but right now we have commercial and residential customers who are using the same entrance and exit and facilities for some of their waste dumping, and that creates some issues just with safety for our customers. The bullets as they're presented here don't actually show a lot of the effort that has been put into this, but we did have a couple different iterations of a proposed design. We did some peer review with some other counties to have them provide input. We've talked to Republic Services as well about some of their operational needs, and so it's been a really collaborative process to come up with the basis of design that is being presented to move forward, which was completed in 2024 with the upgrades, the preferred upgrades in the site layout. That concept has been reviewed and approved by the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And so we are ready to move forward with the next steps or next phases of the project, which are design and then construction. We brought you a request for an RFP a couple, 3 weeks ago. Probably been 4 weeks now, I lose track of time, but for a consultant to help us manage through this process. But one of the key factors that we are considering as we move forward is the need to maintain continuity of operations at that facility while this construction and reconfiguration takes place. So because of that, we are recommending a design build approach to project management, which Matt will discuss and describe a little bit later. So with that, I will pass it to Jeff, who will show us what the basis of design is with the current.
All right, I know it's always hard to talk about a picture. So I got a pointer so I can point and kind of show you what the general concepts of what we're looking to accomplish here and how this can be different than what we do right now. So currently, that's going to show up on the screen.
Best laid plan.
It shows up on the wall, but on the screen. Okay, that's
Well, you can always
Yep, I'll get up and point. It's a little easier.
Go old school, Jeff.
I'm good with old school. It comes from being old, so. Alright, so currently, there's two main entrances, there's two entrances to the work. There's the primary entrance where off of Hogan Bay Road, where basically all of our waste customers come through. They come across, go to the existing inbound scales, they weigh in. And then the public self-haul brings their waste over to this public tipping area where they drop into some drop boxes. And then the commercial en route, the commercial customers come down and drop their waste into the transfer station building, which is existing. Additionally, some of our public that has self-tipping trailers that doesn't work up here also tip in this. And that's where some of the safety issues come in, as we have the public basically and the commercial en route haulers basically in the same facility. Additionally, the second entrance is near the other one, but it basically comes down as like a frontage road along the I-5. That's where the residents and others come down to utilize Hazo House, as well as the existing recycling facility, which is here. So the concept is to try to separate again the commercial and the residential, So a primary residential self-haul entry will change to be the one that comes down along here. Hazo House obviously will stay the same where it's at. We'll be creating a set of scales and a new transfer station building. That'll be smaller than the existing one, but this one would be primarily serve just again public self-haul. So this would, and then basically they would come tip outbound scales and then they go on their way. This will mostly separate again the public self-haul from the key, again back to the previously mentioned safety issue. Additionally, this will give us a significant amount of additional capacity, again, because it will have two buildings. This one will have a compactor just as this one does. And there's another key piece of this is will give us some redundancy by having these two buildings each with a compactor. So when, as you are well aware, when the compactor goes down currently, that puts us in, we can't move waste and we can really get backed up. If that one of these were to go down for either scheduled maintenance or unexpectedly, it does give us an option to potentially, move other vehicles to the other side, get waste through in those certain situations. So the recycling area, as you can see, would then be taking out here, would then move up into where the existing public tipping area is. It'll actually be a little larger space than we currently have for the recycling area, so it'll allow us to not just collect items that we're currently collecting, but will give us some options to accept additional materials. One of the things we're looking at is reinstituting electronics recycling up there, as well as some other, give us more space to look at other potential future options, which right now we just don't have the space to add any, because we're space limited. Another key aspect of why we're doing so much of this down here is all this area down here is on original ground and does not overlay or is not underlaid by the old closed circle. Everything out around here is over garbage. And that subsides, and so that's creating some of our maintenance issues as subsidence happens. It's you have to even the road it subsides. You have to refinish and repave it. So trying to we didn't want to build anything new up there. So that's part of the reason why everything's more concentrated down here. Hazo House will continue to be the same. Organics, which is currently up here, is not going to change. It'll be the same. So individuals that have organics will continue to utilize that. So basically a couple of different sets of scales, and that's another thing I want to mention. We're going to plan includes a consolidated operations center building where basically we can get together, like we have employees that are out of Tilly, basically, as well as spread around on the site to get it kind of consolidated into one location, as well as additionally have some conference space. Right now, we have no conference room space. If you've been to our breakfast things before out there, it's the room's tiny. So this should not just for having staff meetings, but also provide our education outreach individuals a large enough space that they can do outreach, like have classes and do teaching and that sort of thing. So on site, so that way they can teach people different things, but then it's visible, they can go around and show them operations. So that in a nutshell is kind of what we're looking to do. And if you have any questions, I just kind of want to get the high view approach.
Is this a recap of like what you presented a year and a half ago, or is this something new that's happening?
This is a recap sort of what the proposed configuration would look like.
So if I was here then, I've seen this same layout.
Yes, same layout, same reasoning behind that, yes.
Questions?
Okay, so with that, next slide, we're gonna pass it over to Matt to describe a little bit or explain a little bit about the design build project delivery and how we are planning on moving forward with construction of this project.
Sure. Man, that's complicated, right? So like Karen said, maintaining business continuity throughout the project is super key, and you can see from Jeff's slide there that that's a pretty complicated endeavor. And how do you do that? Maintain that business continuity, as well as, obviously, without saying, safety for everybody involved. And a lot of homework and a little bit of consultation with Rick Thomas and his group there. I know they've attempted to pursue this type of alternative project in the past as well. We really landed on the design build. And the reason we did, there's benefits, a number of them, and we'll get to that in the next slide, but that number one benefit is, as you know, in contrast to a traditional design bid build, where these processes of design and construction are done in silos separately. In design build, you have one design build firm that brings together their own design and contractor team, and they all work collaboratively with the county throughout the process to come up with the design and a plan for construction as a team, as opposed to siloed, like I said, right? So you get that collaboration that will help us come together with that plan in order to deliver the project successfully and at a high value.
Is this the same process that we were looking at when we were looking at the courthouse remodel that first? Okay. Yes, perfect.
Yes, that was, I believe, Rick, a progressive design build, which is slightly different, but we already have the first step, if you will, of that, which is the basis of design. So we can kind of jump right to design build.
But we have to get approvals for it.
Yeah. And so DB delivery is authorized under statute. We've already issued the RFQ for consulting services to help us through the process, and it's highly experienced in this delivery method. I think it closes on Friday. It does require the second step as an application to the project review committee, which is housed by DES. It's not necessarily a part of DES. They've just by statute been instructed to form the committee that's made up of members from different organizations. And they approve or disapprove of your application to move forward. We're pretty confident in our ability to move forward with it, however. So selection of the actual design build firm will be done through a separate RFQ and RFP combined process. So we'll shortlist the most highly qualified. Yeah, great. So some of the benefits we already talked about, that collaboration. We feel you'll get the best value product by this approach through the competitive contractor proposals for how they will deliver based on the basis of design. Again, it's integrated and collaborative between all of the parties involved. So you get the ability to plan with those who execute, right? The planning, the designers, the planners with the contractors. You'd likely get an earlier construction start with a faster project delivery because of that collaboration. Another great benefit, I think, is the risk for change orders is shifted onto the DB firm. So not entirely, there are some exemptions for force majeure type of events, but most of that risk is then shifted to the DB firm. They're responsible for delivering on what they proposed. We also think, again, better cost predictability with a cost ceiling. So you essentially give them your budget and say, go do it, right? Based on an approved proposal. I'll pause for a second and see if there's a question.
I would just say this is not something that's completely unique and untried. This is how a lot of different projects are delivered. So it's not, right, it's a process that's tried and true. It's not something that we're just test driving for our particular project, just to give some confidence in the process.
There have been many, many approved applications through the PRC where folks have successfully delivered these methods, Karen. So real quick, just decision points for the board. We've already met the RFQ for the consultant. Next step would be the award of that consultant. And then the third decision point is releasing the RFP for the design build firm. And of course, last would be a contract award for that firm. And then the last slide here, next one, Jeff, is just a high-level visual schedule, and I won't speak to it, I'll just let you absorb it. I will say that last one on design and construction is pretty liquid at this point, so it's a best guesstimate. It will change.
And again, just for context, when we're talking about the work reconfiguration, project costs on that are somewhere between 20 and 22 million right now without having moved into the design phase of the project where it's also always refined, but the significance in terms of investment, a significant project with lots of moving pieces, and that ensuring that continuity of operations is critical for us. Questions on that before we talk about the second major project that we're here to just provide an update on?
Is this, I know there's a couple of processes. Is this a process where we don't have to, like, you can choose the developer or the contractor based on like a series of criteria, not just the lowest
Correct.
bid?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
part of.
And it brings the opportunity for sort of innovation and creativity in terms of how the design is put together, right? We have a basis of design, but that's really that collaboration between the design and the contractor to come up with what that looks like, and then we can choose from a best value product for us. It's not lowest cost.
It allows a lot more flexibility, rather than, especially in an environment where there are some variables. If you come in and lock it in and someone gives you a quote, then you're constantly hit by change order after change order if you have to adjust. This way you're saying, we want to do something, here's what we think we want to do. And then, as Karen mentioned, you're partnering with the design firm to come in and help you get there to the best possible solution.
We've used this a lot, a few times, and like, I know like really high up on their priority list is like the teams come in and then like the quality of the team.
Yep.
Is a huge who are they proposing is gonna be working with you? What is their experience doing a similar type project? What experience does the organization have with that firm or those team members? And that weighs pretty significantly into the criteria.
Yes, we kind of high level, looked at it at a high level, but it is, as you state, it's quite a project when we do the RFQ, you can see it's a two-part process. There it's an RFQ and an RFP. We first evaluate based on qualifications, and then there's a narrowed down list of who would move forward, and then they're going to provide a request for proposal, and then we choose from among those proposals that we receive. So it is a two-part selection process.
Okay. So the next piece is South County, is that where we're going?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So
Yep.
This is what I should look for.
South County Conservation. So out of that initial master plan that was completed in 2018, another area that was identified is expansion of upgrades to our facilities in the South County, and that would be the Rainier and Rochester drop box. The original plan was to improve those facilities within their existing blueprints, including adding scales, making some upgrades to the area where the solid waste is disposed. And when we started really getting into and doing an analysis of that, it became clear pretty quickly that those footprints weren't adequate to really expand or upgrade the facilities in the way that they needed to be, that there wasn't going to be enough space and the configuration of the topography, all of that wasn't going to be able to be done successfully to actually improve the facilities in a meaningful way that would add capacity there. So the South County Transfer Station project, we started having a discussion about that, and an initial feasibility study was performed in 2021. And out of that, there was some significant community stakeholder engagement that we did in 2022. And that was, it meant reaching out to the community, asking what kind of services that they would like to see in the South County. It asked how far you would be willing to go to deposit your waste. It asked about other types of services that they might be interested in, whether organics in the South County or recycling area. So based on that, then we completed another transfer station site evaluation in 2023. Our consultant HDR did. And that started looking at possible locations for a facility that would meet these capacity and improved services desires. And so out of that, we narrowed it down to a couple different locations. One was including expanding the space on the Rainier Dropbox location, and then another privately owned parcel. In April, you asked about the last board briefing. This is, again, where we brought this forward to the board just as an update. And so subsequently to that, there'd been another technical site assessment evaluation done, and it did narrow it down to expanding the Rainier Dropbox location. And that is currently where this project stands. And I'll have Jeff talk a little bit about where we are in terms of moving forward on this project.
Certainly. So currently, right now, the project's temporarily on pause, I guess you could say, pending completion of the site reconfiguration project. For a number of reasons. First off is we're prioritizing that because it is our primary site, and we definitely need to get that overall capacity available. And all the other assets that are doing that expansion. So that is our number one priority project. But additionally, one of the key aspects to that is the timing of adequate financial resources. Now, as Karen mentioned earlier, the work reconfiguration is expected to be somewhere between $20 and $22 million project. And tentatively, the initial rough estimate for doing the South County Transfer Station piece is around $14 million. And currently, it just to do them simultaneously, it's just done, that's just more assets than as far as in our account than we have available. So it's the timing to do one at a time, because they're obviously we need to bring that revenue in to be able to afford to do the other one as well. And I know the work reconfiguration is going to eat up a significant amount of what we have currently available in our capital funds. Additionally, these are big projects as far as taking a lot of staff time to curry them through the process. And so, so it's key in having staffing resources available to manage each of those projects. So again, doing them one after the other versus trying to do them simultaneously. Sure.
On the resource side, when do you anticipate having available resources?
Tentatively, I think as far as the timeline, we're looking at probably starting around 29 and 30, because it's going to be into 28 before the work reconfiguration is completed.
Wasn't part of it also that by making the improvements at the work, that's going to help inform
Exactly.
what's going to happen down at South County as well? So we'll see kind of what those movements are.
Yeah, as the last bullet point that I mentioned, is that really, that's exactly correct. Is once we have that, we can see how that impacts the system.
Forward slide, your bullet's not up.
There, sorry. That's exactly right, is that we can then reassess what, for a couple of reasons. I mean, when you're gonna build, what's the right size to build South County, so what is the waste flow down in that area? The South County Transfer Station, if we build it, would be more than just for public self-haul, which would be a key piece. But one of the concepts of building that would also be that LeMay in particular, who services the curbside program, would have a high interest in being able to, a lot of their South County routes, to be able to use that facility to get rid of, because that saves them having to drive all the way up to the work and all the way back and continue their routes, because a lot of times they'll have to unload a couple times during the day. Additionally, that by getting that waste delivered to that facility. Right now, again, all the waste at those two drop boxes is hauled to the work, gets turned around, and gets hauled all the way back to Centralia. Oh, you're 2/3 of the way to Centralia already when you're down there. So the idea would be then curbside waste that comes in, as well as the public waste, could then be loaded and go straight to Centralia, which will actually have a positive impact on the work, because that now all that waste won't be going to the work. That gives us additional capacity there, because it's waste that's not coming in those facilities. So again, as mentioned, we'll reassess once the working configuration is done, what does waste flow look like, and at that time, so we appropriately size that facility and
Then
construct
LeMay
it.
can reduce my trash bill, which
Well,
is double what
that's up to
people pay.
LeMay.
Maybe just not increase. And I will,
quickly.
as quickly. I will also say, talking about adequate financial resources, we are always looking for potential grant opportunities to help fund these. I will tell you that we have not found a lot of options to fund this type of infrastructure, but we always keep our eye out for that as a possibility or something to leverage. And to your question, Leonard, yes, we expect to the 22 million is going to take a lot of our current reserves, cash reserves that we've built up. And at one point, we thought we had a lot of money in the solid waste fund. And then when we started looking at the cost of construction, and as much as it's increased lately, we found out that there's not adequate resources for both at these times. But there's also the possibility of a public works board loan, for example, if we needed to bridge through with a low income, a low interest rate on something like that. So we'll look more closely at those financial resources when we get more information through the process of the work reconfiguration. So that's the update we wanted to provide. Are there other questions or information that we can help answer?
I think it was a great update. I appreciate it. I know there's some folks here that hadn't seen it yet.
Yep.
I, of course, want to see the South County Transfer Station ready and going as soon as possible, but I understand your timelines and your restraints. I might forget in a year and be like, why haven't you started on the South Transfer Station again?
Next time we
Slap me upside the head.
Next time we bring an action item for you to approve a contract, you can ask the question again, right?
Hold up. And I'm like,
Fair
not
enough.
until we do the South County.
Well, please don't do that. Because the longer we hold it up, that'll be the longer the South County Transfer Station.
Down. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember when?
All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Have you presented I know that there was a lot of, when we first started talking about South County Transportation, where it's gonna go, what it's gonna look like, I never got a final answer. Have you gone to the communities there, like Rainier? Have you gone and explained to Rainier? Those are big plans for them that I'm sure that they would love to plan their world around too.
Jeff, I'll let you answer that. I think the
Not
solid waste
yet.
advisory
Okay.
committee is.
Because that's exciting for them. That's business.
And we have, of course, this has been spoken about at SWAC a number of times as well. So, the city, I think Rainier may be one of the ones that hasn't put a representative.
They're the one where we don't have a member.
Correct.
So there's a
That might be
disconnect.
an opportunity.
Sure.
Might be an
Yeah,
opportunity.
because that's good news for them. They might love to hear about a project like that.
Absolutely.
Good point.
So,
This will continue to be in front of the SWAC as we have that, because there's an interest.
yeah.
Thank you very much for the time. Thank you.
So wouldn't this be a really good presentation as study?
Steady as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're signing up for all kinds of stuff.
All right, we'll see you there.
All right, next up is an executive session pursuant to RCW 4231-10-1B to consider selection of a site or acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of increased price. 30 minutes.
We'll start with 30 minutes.
Board action may follow. It's 9:35. We'll be in executive session until at least 10:05. There are other items on the agenda, so we will be back in a public session following the executive session, which will be announced as an extension if necessary, but at this point, we're here till 10:05. 10:30, we're back from our executive session. We're picking up with item 3, which is 2024-25 Biennium Budget Amendment Number 2, second review. Budget team is here. Summer?
Get it, Summer.
Yes, sir, thank you. Summer Miller, Budget and Finance Manager in the Commissioner's Office. And to the left of me is Tiff West and Jennifer Smith and Dolly Alfonseca, all part of the budget team. Today we are reviewing your 2024-2025 Budget Amendment 2. This is your preliminary to final decision review. We will be asking that the board give direction to staff today on what items that you would like to fund and not fund, so that we can get these final approvals combined and then noticed to the public appropriately. As a reminder, we will be bringing this forth on June 17th for a resolution to adopt the amendment changes. So again, our timeline, last week we did the first review and preliminary decisions. Today we're doing second review and final preliminary decisions. In the upcoming weeks, we'll do the first and second week notice of public intent to amend the budget and then adopt the amendment 2 by resolution. This budget amendment is noticed, but a public hearing is not necessary. There are no capital budget changes that requires an amendment to the CIP. You're going to notice this packet is arranged a little differently today. We kind of put some of the, I guess, the easier items at the front. So here is your capital recommendations summary. That is the name of the report from the new EPM system, by the way. We call it the RECSUM for short. It shows you the preliminary decisions based off of your maintenance request, summary by funds, and policy request, summary by funds on the right side. No changes to this particular slide. We did change the layout here to make it easier to read. So capital maintenance and policy requests other funds, there's no general fund impact here. Yellow highlights indicate throughout this slide deck that these items are backed by revenue. The green highlights indicate that they've been previously approved and or mandated either through board action or legislation. And then if there's any pink highlights, it indicates that it's off cycle and or there is no revenue to back the request. So you can see that all of the capital requests here are backed by revenue. Are there any questions? Okay. So next, my clicker is not working. Wiggle my nose.
What is that? Now I'm gonna,
Yeah, is it the,
I dream of Gina.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I have to like.
Or Bewitched, that's
Yeah,
right.
Bewitched. I
There
try
you
to
go.
wiggle my ears, something.
Should go.
Twinkling sound.
I was like, okay, now you have to tell me what it is because I'll be like
Thinking about it all
thinking
day.
about it. And I was like, I know it's Nicole Kidman, but like,
Sorry, we're experiencing technical difficulties right now.
she was the,
She was in the I Dream of
That
Jeannie.
was the Redux.
it was redone and she did it.
Perfect.
When I was little, we watched the original.
Yeah, the
one.
original, with that, where her nose would just go. doo-doo.
I watched the remake of it.
Yeah.
So off topic,
Yeah,
but.
okay, perfect. Thank you to the county manager. So, staff would like the board to provide direction on your preliminary final approval of the Amendment 2 Capital Maintenance and Policy Request Other Funds, based on the slide that was just presented to you and the information that was provided to you in your packet. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. If there are no questions, then we respectfully request approval, direction, and approval so that we may get this moving forward.
Thumbs, commissioners?
We're just talking the first page with all the yellow, right?
The capital, yes.
We'll go through each section.
Okay, I think I saw 4 thumbs. 5 thumbs, okay, perfect, thank you. The next slide is the maintenance request summary by funds. The general fund items are highlighted in green. You'll notice that these reports are slightly different from the first review. We took the commissioner's recommendations and requests and moved some of the policy level request to maintenance and vice versa. And we did notate that in the narratives that are in your packet. Following the same format here, you can see that these requests are either backed by revenue in yellow, or they have been previously approved and or mandated. There are 2 pages. And again, the notations are made, not only in the narratives, in some cases, they're notated on this particular page in your packet. You can see I made some notations here, and it'll also be in the future slide on the errata list. If there are no questions, we are seeking direction on preliminary final approval of Amendment 2, operating maintenance request, general funds, and all funds. We'd like to see a show of thumbs, please. We see 1, we see 2.
These are all of the
See
maintenance
3.
requests, and they're all recommended for approval.
Yes, sir. They're all of the funds, general fund and all funds.
1, 2, 3.
We got 5.
Yep, 5.
Perfect. So, last grouping here, the policy request summary by funds. Again, general fund is at the top. All other funds are listed below that. The figures will be slightly different again because we did some shifting of policy and maintenance requests at the board's request last week. This one is going to be slightly different. So the detail here, again, we know what yellow is and green is, backed by revenue or previously mandated. There are some pink highlights here, and there are a couple lines that are not highlighted. The pink lines are indicating off-cycle and or no revenue to back the request. All 4 requests that are highlighted in pink are tied to FTEs. And then the 2 lines that are in white are the first payment of the detention sales tax bond payment. It's the 2025 payments, interest and principal that would be due in June and December of this year. We would like to transfer that off of the detention sales tax to general fund, and we will structure a repayment resolution either for this one particular payment or for the transfer of the entirety of the debt service to general fund with a longer repayment period.
And Commissioner, what I'll say about the items in pink, we understand that across the county, operations are tight. And we understand that folks in various offices and departments need additional staff. We don't disagree with that. I think our challenge is, as we are talking with a parallel conversation about the structural deficit, and getting our hands around that in progressive conversations as we lead to the budget build in the summer, it wouldn't be our recommendation to support anything that adds to that structural deficit on the general fund side. So that's the perspective from the Budget and Finance Office and the County Manager's Office.
So does that need to be put out in a directive from us to support that notion? You know, cause like, would that be more powerful than you guys having to like just remind us every time somebody asks?
Yeah, that's something that I think that was in consideration for budget containment, which is a status quo budget, meaning that we don't add positions to the general fund until we can really figure out what are we going to do, and are there any revenue options that are gonna offset the significant hole that we're trying to fill.
And we're talking about all the pink on page 12,
Yeah.
assessor and auditor. I do have some concerns, like, in district court. Oh, I see that done here. Okay, so first, the auditor one. We just talked yesterday quite a bit about TC Connect being a huge problem. And I know that the auditor staff is critical in supporting like successful implementation of TC Connect. And with recent turnover of high-level positions, I'd really like to support the auditor's request if we can, because I just think that that's a really important step in making sure that the implementation of TC Connect is successful. And yeah, yesterday we went over that quite a bit, and it just seems like, I mean, Commissioner Minzer made a point that like TC Connect is the one thing that us as commissioners don't really have control over, except funding to make sure that it's successful. And I feel like this is a really important place to like advocate for funding to make sure that that can be moved forward.
100% agree. What I would also say is that we haven't done a full assessment of what those needs are yet. And that is a part of the plan that we will be coming forward to the board and asking for approval on. It's part of that governance structure. But I suspect going through that effort, that additional resources will be potentially identified out of that effort. But we're not there yet.
Our recommendation is to wait until that assessment is done so that we can bring you a holistic plan that includes one-time costs for the vendor potentially, and then also looking at what support do we need, because there could be support in the IT office and the auditor office and a couple other places. We just don't have all of that dialed in yet.
Okay. And I'm assuming the narrative for which specific staff resources is somewhere in one of these packets?
Yes, they're clearly, the auditor's office and financial services is requesting a senior management analyst, and that's on the first page of the narrative following the highlights in your packet.
The same packet we're in now or a different packet?
It's the same packet.
And I believe these packets were given to us last time where the narrative was on there.
Yeah, the narratives were on there, yes, we just printed them out again.
There's like four
They're in
packets.
this one.
Okay.
Like right now.
There's this other one that.
It might just have it.
We'll rotate around. Commissioner Mejia, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. I am supportive of staff's recommendations. I understand, which is, I'm just not comfortable right now seeing that we don't have funding, we're going through cuts, or potential cuts, that we add any more burden onto the general fund, understanding that all the different offices and departments have needs. I look forward to a more comprehensive look at TC Connect because, it's not just the auditor's office I've heard from different offices and departments who have a lot of need as well, and the impact that TC Connect has created for them too. And I think it's better to take a look at that in a comprehensive way, rather than picking one off, randomly. So I look forward to that future conversation. But where I'm at is I'm very supportive of moving forward with the green, the yellow, and the white sections of the operating policy requests.
Commissioner Fournier.
Yeah, I think you kind of stole my sentiment. I think it's important that we have that unified message. If we can craft a way to do that, send that out to the organization, a message that is stating the recommendations that we're getting. And I think it's our job to get and work with our staff to find global solutions to these problems and not grease the squeakiest wheel, because then there might be other wheels that are getting neglected. We've got to come up with the high level assessment on how to move forward. Because everybody's got needs, and like Commissioner Mejia said, everybody's going to have a justification for getting through the stress and the struggles that we've got. But we need our team to come together and make that high level global kind of assessment on what needs to be done across the board.
I've taken a pretty comprehensive look at all of these requests. I looked at each of the summary items, all of the requests in detail, and I'm just gonna say what I think, which is that I actually support in the red here. I would say for the assessor's office, I'm in support of one FTE, additional FTE. So when I'm saying this, I just want to note that I'm saying that, not for. But I support additional FTE requests. I think it's really important for us to be considering that, we grew, we've been growing over the last several years. We were going up in Thurston County's overall population has grown. We've gone from 3 to 5 commissioners. We grew our commissioner staff has grown. We had, we've changed some things around in our commissioner staff. Our staff are our greatest asset, and supporting them is essential to having responsive government. And the offices of the assessor and the district court and the auditor are essential. And understaffing leads to burnout, it leads to delay, it leads to long-term costs. And when we think about TC Connect and specifically in the auditor's office, that's the finance department. And they're dealing with, I know we talked about this yesterday, but what does TC Connect do? It is essentially trying to map all the finances of our system in order to create the backbone that delivers the numbers to our budget office. I think that it's really important that we consider giving that support over to these offices. And it's also important to note that some of our offices directly contribute to some of the revenue generation. Their work brings in funding that supports the general fund itself. I really feel that sometimes we have to spend a little money in order to create additional funding. And so while I'm not in full support of 4 FTEs at the assessor's office, I am in support of funding 1 additional, like a senior appraiser staff, and the other 2, both at district court and the auditor staff. And mostly this is because, we're trying to make sure that there's no burnout, there's no delay, that we're able to deliver the services that we need to deliver to the public and to, in the way that our management within those areas need that support. And so I'm in support of it.
I would echo that. I know that adding FTE puts a burden on the general fund, and it's very direct. We can see it, it's in the numbers, but there are indirect costs that we incur when we don't do things like this, because onboarding new staff is expensive. If we have high staff turnover, that's expensive. And I'm honestly kind of surprised that staff would recommend not funding a position that helps with TC Connect based off of our conversation yesterday and how big of a heartache TC Connect has been. It seems like the county could use every bit of support that we can possibly provide as the board to help make sure that TC Connect, we wrap it up, because it's been such a huge pain in everyone's side.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that we don't know what those needs are. So this is the auditor identifying. And I would also say in terms of equity, the reason you don't have department heads asking for staff, because they have staff needs and they have probably revenue that would fund it for restricted funds. But as a part of this budget process, some of the rules are, this is not where you come and ask for staff.
Well,
so
I'm glad you said that, because I forgot to bring up a point that this was already requested in 2024. So at what point would we be able to grant this request if it's remaining from last year?
We're not saying that we're not saying you can't grant it. The board didn't support it last year, and we're not recommending any increases to the operational deficit. From the Assistant County Manager's perspective, we need to do a complete overview of what the needs are for TC Connect, and we'll bring that back. And my recommendation is look at that holistically and not piece by piece.
How long will that take to get that?
Several weeks.
Several weeks?
Yep.
Okay.
To answer your question, though, I'll just pick on the old sheriff as an example. Like, pretty much everything that didn't get, every budget request that didn't get granted would come up in every amendment, and that's not, we tried to, and so the answer to the question is the next budget cycle, when we build the next budget. So if the auditor didn't get something in the last budget, then this fall, she could ask again for that thing, following the, the general rules. Obviously, we have the latitude and under different circumstances to do it at any time, emergency things come up, but just as a general, like, the way we try to go about business, it would be in the fall cycle, rather than seeing, like, because we've seen I'm using Sheriff Snoz as an extreme example where we would just see every denied budget request and every amendment, no matter what the rules that were put out said, and it was like very frustrating.
But the department heads could have several suggestions on what they need to get us through this TC Connect scenario, but they're under direction not to give those right now. Allow staff to come up with a comprehensive plan on what the county as a whole generally needs to get us over this. And they can't give that direction to independently electeds that can just say, well, no, this is what we really think needs. So what we're being asked is let us do the work so that we can give the full assessment to the board. And it might, I don't know, it might include that request. It might not, but you gotta let them cook.
I don't know. I mean, it's $82,000. It's like, they're not asking for the moon. This is one position with a pretty minimal impact to the general fund to support our primary, like, one of the number one priorities that the county is facing right now, which is to get this TC Connect thing done. And I understand wanting to wait for a holistic picture. I fully support that, but if that's gonna take several weeks and we have staff drowning now, not just in the auditor's office, but everywhere, this would benefit the departments because everybody is suffering from the weight of TC Connect. So this would benefit the entire county to have additional support to make sure that operations can run smoothly.
That's what one person says.
$82,000.
That's what the auditor
No,
says.
this
That's
is,
not
okay,
necessarily
well, I'm
what our
not done
team
talking,
says.
so I'm gonna go ahead and finish. $82,000 is, I don't think that that's too hefty of a lift. We have a ton of vacant positions in the county. Certainly there's money somewhere that we could use for $82,000 a year.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of reinstate, like, our budget team is also dealing with TC Connect while also presenting the budget, while also carrying a lot of loads, and they have needs. IT is completely overwhelmed. They need the support, and they have a lot of needs too. They were trying to have a position, when we start picking off winners and losers in the organization, which has happened before in budget sections, our departments end up losing. And this is the reason why our HR is understaffed or our IT is understaffed, because those are usually the lowest priorities. And I understand the load the auditor's office is carrying. It's a lot. Like, I'm not going to take away from that, but I'm also not going to take away from the load that the rest of the teams and the counties are carrying. And, I think I'll go back to Jennifer's point. It really is about the equity in our organization and how we are making those decisions. And if there are needs across the board, I would rather know the full list of all the needs across the board, because it might just be 82,000 now, but someone else might have a lower need, and then all of a sudden we're gonna be like, well, what do we do? And it's happened as well when we are evaluating positions and they were coming in front of the board, and again, we were picking winners and losers, and I think that's not the way to make decisions. So I think of a holistic view of all the positions that are needed for TC Connect is honestly the way to go. I'll say that in terms of the assessor and district court, the assessor has a lot of needs too. I mean, I think all the organizations across the county have a lot of needs. We have definitely outgrown what we're able to fund. And it's the reason why the county set up 6 different budget proposals in front of the state this year in order to assist us. But I just don't think it's responsible for us to come during a budget amendment and fund positions that are gonna be a hit and then go through in the end of the year and then start making cuts to these positions. So I'll just restate my position. I think that I am in agreement with moving forward with the green and yellow. And Chair, I'll ask that you ask the question.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion on the motion?
Staff also recommend the white, green.
Oh, the green, white, yeah, and the yellow. Sorry, I had said that beforehand.
Yes.
Motion and a second to approve all items and policy requests that are designated in green, yellow, and white, not pink. Discussion on the motion.
Just to make the point that we may be in a point later in this conversation about cutting positions. So adding anything and then having a discussion about cutting later is gonna feel very awkward to me.
Yeah, I don't have any confidence that we're not gonna be cutting a lot of positions, so it just seems ludicrous to add positions at this juncture. So, Commissioner Klaus? I don't care, and I don't care what it relates to. TC Connect, courthouse, elections, and to respond to the commissioner thing, it's like, that was 2.5 years ago when the budget graph and the projection was, we had dialed up a projection that was directly in line with our 2-month target. It's a totally different situation right now, so that's not, that comment, I disagree with the relevance. Commissioner Klaus?
Yeah, so as far as first I wanna just put a pin that I still have quite a few questions about the detention sales tax one. So I'm not ready to vote on that just right now, like I still wanna talk about that. But as far as the auditor position, picking off winners and losers is not how I see this conversation. I mean, I know in the past, that's kind of what has unfortunately had to happen, like people have got, there have been winners and losers, but we all win when TC Connect works successfully. All of us do, the whole county. So I don't see it as that black and white for this one thing. And then as far as equity goes, talking about equity is something that I think we need to be really careful about when we say that, because there's a lot more than just the surface level, like, okay, they got this one position, that's not equitable because departments don't get to do this. Well, what about the revenue that each elected office brings in that goes to the general fund? I don't have a full understanding of the intricacies of the revenue that is generated by elected offices, and I have no idea if that's equitably distributed. I'm not saying it's not, but I truly have no idea. That's really complicated. So I think when we're talking in terms of equity, it's not just who gets to ask for what, it's what does this position support throughout the agency, and where is the revenue going that this office is generating? Is it not, advisable to support this office knowing that they bring in quite a bit of revenue to the county? And they've increased the revenue they've brought into the county in recent years. So that's kind of some of the questions I have about this position.
Did you have questions about detention sales tax? I mean, that's part of the motion, so if you want to get into that, it needs to happen now.
Okay, that's a huge, so I honestly have so many questions that I don't know what to even ask. And I was, hoping to have a meeting set up with budget team. Unfortunately, I had a family emergency come up last week when we had a meeting scheduled. And with this being such a tight turnaround, I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with Summer and the budget team to figure out what's going on with this detention sales tax. But I know that there's been a lot of discussion. At some point, we were told a resolution would be coming forward for us to approve. We haven't seen that yet, but we're being asked to give a thumbs up on this item, and I'm not comfortable giving a thumbs up until I've seen the resolution and kind of have a fuller picture of what's going on with this fund. So I guess I can ask, what if we were to hold off on the detention sales tax item right now, when would be the next opportunity for us to approve it. Would there be a chance for us to see the resolution and then have this conversation again? And would that impact something negatively if we were to do it that way?
Yeah, this amendment's on a pretty tight timeline, and, so, I mean, somebody you want to elaborate on that?
The resolution would have come forth before, so I would get the draft to you. I have not had a chance to send the draft to legal for review. We're also a little short-staffed. It's been very tight the last few weeks, but the board, it's your decision if you don't want to approve the transfer of funds. We will be bringing it back forward because the reality is that the fund has been operating with a negative cash balance. It does not have the fund balance capacity to pay the loan payment this year, principal or interest. It will be in a negative fund balance and a negative cash balance scenario, and a negative fund balance scenario will result in another audit finding. So the bond payment, the debt liability needs to be moved off of that fund.
So,
If you want me to explore other options, and we do this as a year by year or, a couple times a year review, we can do that, but I think it just takes more, that's a lot more work to track, and I think it's cleaner to transfer the entirety of the debt to the general fund and then have detention sales tax pay the debt back to general fund over a period of time. Ideally 10 years, could be 12 years with market rate interest.
okay. So thank you for that explanation. That helps. I'm wondering, if we were to say yes to this and then the resolution hasn't been run through legal yet, is there a chance that the resolution coming forward in its final stage would there be any discrepancies between that outcome and what we'd be approving today?
There would be a difference regardless. So I've already ran the scenario through our bond counsel and through our bond advisors. Neither one sees any legal impacts or any legal reason why we can't do this, nor do they see any market-facing impacts that are negative to the county. When I talk about legal, I'm talking about internal legal, so structuring the language in that resolution so that we're appropriately paying back general fund with an appropriate debt schedule and interest earned over a period of time. And it would be for the entirety of the remainder of the debt, which is about $22 million. So this is just the 2025 payment that is in front of you.
Okay. And then my last question, I think for right now about this one is, I know this is like a bond payment that's been refinanced over years, and there was a question about what the funds were being used for and how they related to the juvenile detention facilities. Can you or someone speak to that, that perceived requirement of this fund going only toward juvenile detention facilities, and are we following that if it is a requirement?
The language in the resolution states that the debt will be paid back by sales tax that is received by the county. It specifically calls out REIT, and I believe it was REIT 2, detention sales tax, and any other revenues received by the county driven by sales tax. And so that was cleared as a general fund as an allowable repayment avenue for the county by bond counsel.
Okay. I know, like, it's not very often that we're able to get something like that in writing, but is there?
I do have that in
You
writing.
do?
Mhm.
Okay. Would you be able to send that to me when you have an opportunity to do that?
Sure.
This detention sales tax thing is something that, I've heard about since I was elected, and there were, concerns back when I first got elected that I didn't really have capacity to look into about whether or not detention sales tax funding is actually being used for juvenile detention facilities. And it's something that has been a conversation with like elected officials, staff, constituents, so people are aware of this, and I haven't been able to dive into all those details, so I just want to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing with this specific fund.
It's not limited to juvenile facilities, though.
Okay,
It's any corrections.
okay. I've heard
Just-
both, and,
It's even broader than that.
okay.
Yeah, it's broader than that, and because we had some question about bond payments, I think
Yeah.
at one point we had council look into that, and that was all cleared.
I can assure you, the money's being used for the appropriate purpose. What
Yeah.
this is it's a cleanup to projections that didn't keep track with how things were being realized. And so we do not want the fund to go into the negative.
It's kind of it's clever. I mean, I had a meeting with Summer, to explain it, and it was, with Commissioner Mejia, it's pretty clever way to basically move the payment and then have the detention sales tax paying back the general fund, because it can basically, over a longer time frame, pay back the entirety. The general fund doesn't suffer at all.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just did it, like if you just had the general fund supplementing, then, you'd lose that money in the general fund, and that would build up. So this was, I thought, a pretty creative way that I hadn't heard before of managing this kind of issue.
Yeah, I am very thankful and proud of Summer and the team for digging into this, identifying the issue, and then coming up with a long-term approach to rectify the issue permanently.
And I'll get to Commissioner Grant, but did the auditor, I know there were emails with the auditor's team about, how we were gonna manage the issue, and they're supportive of this approach, or have they been part of that?
I haven't spoken directly with Financial Services with Joe. I have spoken with Brandon, the internal auditor, and I've included our legal, and I think that's Travis, and also have ran this by the treasurer's office. So the treasurer's office statement is essentially they will pay it from wherever we direct the payments to come from, which would be a budget change. And I don't recall any level of pushback from legal or the internal auditor. It was just a matter of getting the resolution language in place and making sure that it's structured appropriately.
Commissioner Grant?
And we are in the middle of
We're in discussion over the motion Commissioner Mejia made,
Okay,
right?
just want to make sure that that's what we're doing. So, all right, so I just, first of all, want to acknowledge and thank our budget team you guys have been doing an amazing job, diligent work. These reports have been, they're great. They were very, very helpful. I'm just really impressed. I know how hard you're working, especially under challenging circumstances. And with that said, I have significant concerns about whether we're adequately resourcing the ongoing operations of the county. In particular, our workforce is stretched really thin, and we're seeing that impact in service delays and staff burnout and difficulty retaining experienced employees. We've had a ton of turnover in the assessor and the auditor's office and in other offices here all throughout the county. So I support the additional FTE requests because I believe in investing in our staff, and it's necessary to maintain the level of services that our residents expect and deserve. So moreover, it's important to recognize that some of these departments, like the auditor and the assessor, generate revenue that helps fund the general fund. Supporting them isn't just an expense, it's a reinvestment that can help sustain core county services long-term. And so I just, for me, it's just, I'm not going to be voting. That's it. I urge us to consider long-term sustainability and operational effectiveness as we finalize this budget. The last thing I want to say is that for me, until we, and I'm really excited about this budget team and all of the efforts, and I know they're working very hard, and I have all the faith that we're going to do a line-by-line audit of all of our revenue sources, that we'll be looking at vacancy savings, that we'll be, really working hard over the next several months to take a look at how to find the resources needed within the general fund to effectively operate and give positions to the people who need them. So I'm looking forward to that as we move forward, but that's how I feel.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Claus?
If we're waiting for a holistic picture, I'm back on the auditor one. If we're waiting for a holistic picture, it's gonna take several weeks. Let's say, just hypothetically, we get that picture back and we're like, okay, these are the positions throughout the county we need to fund because of our analysis of what we need. And then at that point, when would we be able to approve those expenditures? Would it be in the fall? Would that be the time where we say, okay, based on the analysis, this is the appropriate time to approve any new FTEs to support TC Connect?
We don't have the whole plan dialed in yet. That's part of what we're bringing in a consultant to assist with that. But my idea was that work would be done and it would be a part of what would the ask in the upcoming biennial budget. because that's generally when we're asking for new positions.
Okay, I'm just not comfortable waiting that long to get one person on board at the auditors, so I would ask to amend the motion to include approval of that one item for the auditor, and I can give a thumbs up on everything else, including the detention sales tax, if we make that amendment.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have open discussion on the amendment, which is to add a position for the auditor only to the original motion. Any discussion on that? Call for the vote then. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
The motion, that amendment fails. So then I'm gonna call for a vote on the underlying motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 3-2, that motion carries. So it would be
So just to be clear, that's yellows, whites, and greens. That's
staff's
what the original motion
recommendation
was.
was passed 3-2.
Yes, thank you, I was just making a note. Okay, so, thank you, that was the second page. We were asking for board direction. This is the list, the errata list. We made notations on here of the items that were added to the specific slides. That was the first few items, what was shifted from maintenance to policy and vice versa. And one of the biggest changes was the credit card rebate distribution. There was a roll-up amount showing under the auditor's office, and that was distributed across all of the offices and departments. Are there any questions on this particular slide? No. Okay, so today, our next steps are to confirm direction on the capital request. What I heard captured was that we are fully in agreement, all 5 thumbs up that we're gonna approve capital requests, 5 thumbs up on the maintenance requests, and we have 3 thumbs up moving policy requests forward, 2 down. And that's what we will put together as a budget package for the amendment 2 to be published in our local paper. For the public, I'm sorry, and then after that 2-week period, we will bring forward a resolution for adoption of Amendment 2 with no changes and no public hearing. Are there any questions on the calendar and next steps? Okay, that concludes our presentation today.
Thank you, budget team.
Thank you.
Budget team.
Okay, that's the end of the morning's agenda.
So I don't know that have we given proper like direction, response to the notion that we're looking at like a no growth, like that, I feel like that's still something that's been suggested, but it's not something that's wrestled to the ground.
So, because we're in 2 different budget conversations, the amendment is finishing up the 2025 budget. When we came into 2025, board gave direction for a status quo approach. That's why we're taking the steps we're taking, and the team is breaking that out.
Understood.
So that's the direction for 2025. It's 26, 27 that,
That's where we're
yes.
signaling now that those discussions are coming.
The next time that summer comes back and we look at all the revenue options, we will put that into a point of consideration to give formal direction to staff so that we can send something out on behalf of the board's direction about that for 26, 27. That'll be very helpful if the board can decide on that. That'll be very helpful in the creation of the 26, 27 budget and even the work that flows into places like HR and the budget team if we're not going to entertain new positions. And that's ultimately for the board discussion and conversation. I'm not trying to, but we will put that on for conversation.
Okay. I think that's like where, like our letter to the elected officials salary commission comes into, like, it's important that we're saying the same narrative across the board. So like that suggestion I appreciate that you all made earlier that we've all kind of joined on to. That's gonna be an important part of that message that we've already signaled we're not taking anything. Now we're looking at everybody else is gonna have to be, you know, considering how difficult it's going to be.
Sure.
Okay, if there's nothing further, we're adjourned.